Hi, this is Laylee with In Vivo Leadership Strategies, and this is Integrity Over Scale podcast. Welcome to Integrity Over Scale podcast. For today, I have my co-host, who will be our permanent co-host, Jakson. So good to have you here.
Great to be here. Really excited.
Can you tell the listeners who you are?
Yeah, I am an executive in aerospace and really excited to be here. I have clearly a leadership role, and this is a really important subject to me. And as a follower of the podcast, really excited to be now a participant.
That's exciting for me too, because it's sometimes really lonely to do any solo podcasts. So it's good to have you here.
Great.
I'm talking to a screen. Now I get to talk to a person. This is so exciting for me too. One of the reasons why I wanted Jakson to be part of this podcast is because I wanted someone who is in a high leadership position. I do consulting and coaching all the time, and so I'm not really in the trench of things. The other reason is that I wanted a woman representation from my end and a man's representation, especially with today's topic and what we're talking about. So are you ready to get into our topic for...
We'll try. That's a lot of pressure there. To represent half the world. I don't know.
If you know Jakson, you know he is the king of dad jokes. So not that he's a father, but you'll probably hear some of that dad joke here and there when we talk. So that'll be really exciting. But today what we're talking about is when confidence starts working against you. And one of the pieces that I really want to go into first and foremost is that leaders often get praise for confidence early in their careers, and that praise can be the baseline on identifying who they are and how they measure themselves in the leadership progress. But it also becomes something where leaders start to identify and protect it at all costs. Has that been an experience that you've seen or felt yourself?
Oh, man, absolutely. And I could think of 4 or 5 examples from my own career, but certainly see it every day. And as much as I'd like to act perfect, I'm sure also it demonstrate that every day. So one example that I was thinking of was earlier in my career, I had this impression that I was a good public speaker or presenter, and I had lived under that impression for at least a year, where I was doing regular meetings, I was running them, I was presenting, I even presented to the entire company at all hands. And then one meeting we decided to try recording as an opportunity to see how we can improve as a presenter. And it was shocking to me the number of awkward pauses, likes, buts, general filler words in there. And it really kind of hurt, where I had this impression of how strong I was as a presenter. And then I could only watch about 30 seconds of this video because it was so painful to see how good I really wasn't. And I had then reflected a little bit more and realized individuals had kind of been trying to coach me along the way, but I hadn't been listening. So I think just one very small example that came to mind.
Did you feel like you had to protect that when you were listening to yourself talk?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I shared, I only listened to about 30 seconds because it was so painful. And I think that in and of itself was a little bit hubristic. I know that's a word that we've talked about before, where I couldn't stomach to confront just how bad I was, how much improvement there was needed, and I had to turn it off. So I think absolutely I was protecting my own ego by not listening to the rest of it.
This actually takes me to a question which I think we can both answer in our own way: when confidence gets in the way. Because I love to know, again, what you've seen, not specifically just your experience, but confidence where this has been something where if you're part of any company, they talk to you about it. They say you need to have confidence. You work on it. You work on it. You get better and better at it. And then at a certain point, it starts to
Mhm.
work against you. So how can you detect something like that within yourself when this confidence is boosting up every single day?
Oh man. I don't pretend to have all the answers on how to recognize that in yourself. But one thing that I found as I've progressed upward in the organization is that the things that I say really mean a lot more often than I intend. And I have a coworker who was recently promoted and it was great. He very much deserves it. But we were in a couple meetings and he carried himself in the way that he was when he was in a manager role, now in an executive role,
Mhm.
and started to attack a different department. And that really carried a lot of weight. And I got a couple comments after that meeting from folks that were in attendance about how concern is their disagreement at the senior leadership level. And I think that was great. He and I have a great relationship. We had a good conversation about it. Of course, we're generally on the same page, but there was one opportunity that he saw that we could improve. But the way that he was approaching it really led the company to believe that there maybe was a bigger issue than there actually was. And
Mm.
I think that was due to his position. So as you get higher and higher in the organization, your words mean more and often carry far, far longer than you expect that they would.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me, one of the pieces that I see a lot is confidence is used as the armor that we've talked
Mm-hmm.
about.
Absolutely.
It serves you very well as you are like in lower positions. And that's again, I've said this and I'll say it again. It's what you feel like people are measuring you for. And so
Mm-hmm.
you continuously use it and you get better at it until you get to this point where confidence is your currency. And that's how you get attention from anybody.
Yeah.
So you are looked at based on how loud you are in the room, how often you raise your hand, how often you talk. And we've talked about some companies where they may have conferences, and in the conferences, they have cameras everywhere just to watch how the crowd is and the people that are participating in
Yeah.
it is. How has that been something that you feel like companies, it could work for them, but it can also work against them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had the opportunity to participate in companies like that before.
Mhm.
Not to cameras, that's a little extreme. But I was at a training and we had the very top of the organization involved in the training, which was fantastic because they were engaged, they were doing the reading, they participated to a degree in the discussion.
Mhm.
However, they also had a notebook and they were keeping track of who is participating, who was over participating, sort of hogging the spotlight. And I think it was great because it sent the message that this is really important and ensured that everyone there was engaged and totally on. Now, I also think there's some downsides where it made the environment much more stressful. Individuals that are much more introverted, many of them had a hard time finding the right opportunity to jump in. And those people that had, or at least seemed to have, that inherent confidence really flourished in
Mhm.
there, where maybe not everyone was, just based on their personality, wasn't given the same opportunity, or maybe at the end it didn't quite show that they had engaged as much as they had.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Confidence is such a funny word because it's not a bad thing.
Hmm.
And this is why I felt so conflicted covering a topic like this because if you have a very healthy confidence, then you can light up in the room, you can feel confident in what you're saying, how you're saying it, how you're carrying yourself. But then it gets to a point where I think most companies, when they've really, what do I want to say? When they really stress that in their people, it starts to work against them. So, one of the things that I think about is a leader thinks, well, if I am the loudest in the room, then I'm going to get attention from the executives. And so they're loud, they're obnoxious, they're just being rude to people because they're right. And sometimes that works based on your company. If it's toxic, they're like, oh, this guy, he gets it. This person, this woman, they get it. And then it could also be the opposite, where the energy is very much red in the room. Your disrespect and how you are coming off is rude. And so that works against you too. But it's always, from my experience at least, you can tell me if you feel that way, it's always the first one where I see a lot of companies like glorify that person. And I have shared this in the podcast too, but like one of the experiences that I had is I had a lot of men in the room with me, and they continuously shared their experiences, their thoughts, their ideas, and I felt like the past hour we weren't getting anywhere. And so as a person in the team, I thought, well, they needed someone who's more of the execution, the person who's putting this into action. And so they would say things and I would write it down to make sure that we do it. But the way my higher level leader thought of that was, oh, Laylee is super quiet. And that worked against me.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is maybe there's a concept to explore here about maybe healthy self-confidence or confidence in general versus an unhealthy confidence. So maybe going off script here a little bit, do you have an idea on how you think about confidence? How would you define confidence for listeners?
So maybe that's something we can really look into, because my definition of confidence as a person is someone who is open and assertive and is not afraid to share their opinion. But that's so close to the hubristic side of things, because if you lead a little bit to that side, then those all work against who you are. And so I would say the definition is that you feel good in your skin.
Okay. And that sounds like a very positive thing. It's hard to find fault with that. Where I feel like maybe mainstream media and more traditional views of confidence are more you're very sure that you are correct, which kind of does the opposite, where you close yourself off to alternative opinions. And I think that's where leaders and organizations really get into trouble, is if they have, for lack of a better term, I'll call it the bad confidence, where you're just so sure that you're right, there's no reason to listen to anyone else. That can be very dangerous, versus if you have that more, it seems almost like an innate confidence in yourself, that you're more willing to leave yourself open to different opinions on.
I really like that, because then we go into, let's understand the difference between being confident and being someone who, let's just say, arrogant.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the right word to say.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think, arrogance, hubristic, maybe one-tracked. I think all of those are very fair.
Yeah. So if we were to say confidence is feeling good in your body, let's say, with who you are, but arrogance is more about being closed.
So it's kind of protecting your ego in a way, maybe.
Which goes right back to what we were talking about, is that protection of yourself and who you are. What are some of the effects? Maybe this is what we'll go into.
Great.
Of being arrogant.
I don't know, man. I feel like I'm on the spot there. I don't know, Laylee, what are some of the effects of being arrogant?
Well, the arrogance has to do with your people and what they feel. So if you're an arrogant person, if you're talking to your team, again, people can feel your energy. By the way, it's not something that can be hidden in any way, shape, or form. But if you're being an arrogant person to your team will feel that and say, okay, I can't go to this person. I can't be creative. I can't share my opinion. It could have been a project that they were doing. They would share the information, and the leader would always say it's wrong and find faults within it. And it wasn't like faults where you're thinking, okay, this is amazing feedback, this is so great. It was more of like, the font is wrong, or this is too extreme, or they just never would get the proper feedback that they needed.
Yeah.
And so it got to the point where this participant said, my team and I, we would just do it and we wouldn't even share it with this leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I've heard a saying, I guess, that leaders' attitudes are contagious. So it sounds very similar, where if you're not open to that feedback, your team probably avoids giving it to you, but maybe even more dangerously, your team is also less open to feedback themselves. So I absolutely have seen, I've experienced, I've probably perpetrated that myself. So I think that's a really good one. Now, do you have some suggestions on what we should be looking out for as leaders that might be symptoms that we need to look in the mirror and look at ourselves?
One of the best ways to do that is to look at what people are giving you in terms of signals.
Okay.
Because think about emotional intelligence. There are 4 domains in emotional intelligence. The first one is self-awareness. And the whole theory is if you don't have self-awareness, then you can't regulate yourself, you can't be socially aware, and you can't also have good relationship, right? The relationship management of emotional intelligence. So those are the 4 domains of emotional intelligence, if you didn't know. So for you to have that social awareness, you have to have that self-awareness. So in some ways, if you can't, let's say your level of self-awareness is low, you need to look around people who you trust, people who you know, and look for those cues. So that would be one way of doing that.
Okay. Kind of have like a canary in the coal mine, so to speak, on your team, someone that is willing to give you that feedback.
Right.
Now, what about, and this was a situation that I was in recently, about a year and a half ago, where I was moved to a new team. So maybe I was performing at one organization. In this case, I received a promotion to a whole new company, part of our more broad organization. But I'm walking into a team for the first time. How would you suggest, as a leader, I approach that? Because I have some ideas about what worked. I know there's some changes that are needed on this new team, but I also don't have the rapport built with the team members. So I don't have a trusted advisor that can give me that sort of feedback.
Yeah. Then if you don't have that in the workplace, I always say your personal life comes through. So, for instance, for me, I have immediate family. I have a loved one that I can go to. Let's say even forget work for a second.
Sure.
Maybe there's a scenario where I'm with people and I feel like I don't know if I was myself or if I maybe said something wrong. So I'll check in with my partner and say, hey, when I said this, did this make sense? And he would tell me immediately. But I know that he gives me good, honest opinions.
Yeah.
So you can always work with your personal circle and see where that takes you. But in other words, you have a good, I don't know, I keep thinking about Meet the Parents, and I apologize, but the circle of trust, if you've watched the movie, this is what I'm talking about. So have that circle of trust, and even if it's not at your work, make sure that it's somewhere personal where you can bring that feedback in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas or any takes that you can give to the listeners?
Yeah, I think definitely having that trusted advisor is really good. A couple other suggestions that I've received in my career: giving feedback is really tough. And when you ask, especially a person that reports into you, for their true and honest feedback, it's always going to have a filter on there, because at the end of the day, you have a really big influence over their role. And so the suggestion was to normalize that feedback. So regularly, like each one-on-one, give them feedback on one thing that they can do better. It doesn't have to be, of course, derogatory. It's very constructive, but normalize, hey, here's something that you can improve on. And that feedback really is a gift. And then once you give that gift of feedback to that individual, it really opens the door to having a very open and honest conversation about, as your leader, is there anything I can be doing better to support you? Or is there anything that you see that you would like the team dynamic to change? ask them a little bit more, and you have to be very open and always thank them for that feedback, because it truly is a gift and helps you fill in a blind spot.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I also think it's important to build your self-awareness inside.
Mm.
I want to elaborate a little bit more on that, because it's kind of like me saying be your best version, and it's like, what are you talking about? What does that even mean?
I think there's books written on that.
Tons of those. The self-awareness piece that sticks with me is knowing your triggers.
Mm.
Because if you are thinking you're very confident and then you're falling into the arrogance piece,
Mm-hmm.
more than likely something triggered you where you went a little too extreme.
Mm.
So it could be a situation. It could be what else? But past patterns, just history of things that you've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
So one kind of example that comes to mind is you're in a meeting and someone undermines you in the middle of the meeting, and
That's happened to you?
never.
So the few listeners that happens to, yeah, how would you approach that? What would you be looking for?
So first, really focus in your body. This is what I also share with clients of mine, or any clients of mine as a coach, is I say, where are you feeling in your body? And so if someone comes at you in a meeting, immediately what happens? So for me, my heart, I can feel it here in my chest.
You feel it's like a pressure?
It feels like a pressure, and I also feel like my heart rate going up.
And that for me is exactly, I can feel my just temperature going up and the heart rate racing.
Yeah.
Okay, so the heart starts racing, you're feeling slighted. What's next?
What is next, right? So this is where your amygdala alarm goes off, because now it's like, oh, this has happened to me in the past. Let me respond the way I know it's going to work really well.
And the amygdala,
Mhm.
for us less learned individuals, I understand that to be responsible more for the fight and flight response.
Yeah.
And it's a almost prehistoric part of the brain.
True. So it's your so once you have that threat come in, your thalamus goes, I think, to your amygdala. And by the way, I'm not a scientist in that aspect. I'm a scientist in the leadership aspect. So if I'm saying anything wrong, I apologize in advance. But what happens is, in research, we call that the low road.
Okay.
Which means your amygdala is now activated. It's that alarm going like, hey, something's off. You got to do something about it. You either fight or flight. So in this case, that's why I want you to pay attention to your body, because that tells you what's going on with you, and it's your amygdala. And one thing that I'll tell you is, when you're in this stage, you forget to breathe. That is something that you forget to do. Have you noticed that?
I haven't. That's great, though.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm in a meeting. My coworker undermines me for the first time ever that's happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can feel my blood pressure going, my heart racing. And so I guess suggestion 1, it sounds like, is recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
Suggestion 2, it sounds like, maybe take a deep breath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then are there any other tools that you'd suggest that we explore?
100%. So there's actually this amazing tool that you can use called STOP. And it's basically 4 seconds of it. So STOP is abbreviation for S is you stop whatever you were going to do, which is, I'm going to attack this person for saying something.
Respond.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you take a deep breath. So, and by the way, this doesn't mean in the middle of the meeting you want to go like, because everyone, I joke around when I do workshops about this, people laugh, because everyone's going to look at you and go, this person's probably the craziest person in this room. So whatever they're going to do, they're probably going to do a next ninja move or something. And then O is to observe what's happening. And I love this part, Jakson, because observation means I look at the situation and say, how am I feeling about it? So in this situation, with this person coming at me, I feel disrespected. That's how I feel. Okay. But there is another angle to this. And it's, what does that person feel? So if in the middle of that meeting, this person is attacking me, my first thought is, how do I feel? I feel really disrespected. But maybe this person feels like they attacked me because they've emailed me 5 times and I haven't responded. Or it could be something simple as they're just having a really terrible day and they're just taking it out on me because they're coming from their low road, from their amygdala. So it doesn't have to really be things that I did wrong, but it could also be things that they're going through.
So the observe, you're almost like a third party observer. You want to look at your position, maybe your coworker that's doing something that's triggering you.
Yeah.
And then maybe try and zoom out and look at it more generally also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I always share with my clients or any workshop I do too, maybe take that a little bit step beyond what I'm saying. So in other words, say what you feel. I feel disrespected, but what could be more true about this context, right? What could be more true about this context is this person that's coming at me, she's known to have a history of really telling people off. And this is how she feels like she has control and she feels heard. And people know about this pattern. Okay. So then what I'll do is we went through S-T-O. Now we're going to go through T is, so
I missed
take
T.
a breath.
Take a breath.
To think about that. Take a breath.
Great.
And then you observe.
Yeah.
And then P is you proceed. So you proceed. Now what you've done is you took a breath and you started to think logically about things. So you have now chosen what we call the high road in research, which is now your prefrontal cortex in motion. Now the activation in your amygdala is suppressed. It doesn't mean it's fully gone. It's just suppressed.
Okay.
So now you're able to talk in the way that you want to talk with this person. So it could be like, hey, so-and-so, I'm so sorry that you feel that way. Help me understand what I can do to fix that. And it comes from somewhere genuine rather than, you know what, you tell me what you want. Let me fix it. You can hear the tone of that too.
Yeah.
So that's why I always think, oh my God, I forgot to breathe anytime I go through something triggering. And then I come to myself again.
So that sounds a lot like, I've heard it described as thinking fast and thinking slow. Maybe it was a type 1 and a type 2 thinking. So
many different ways
very much
to explain this. Yeah.
So stop. So one more time, it's stop. Don't immediately respond.
Right.
And then T is take a breath. And not like a crazy person.
I mean, if you want to, if you're with like your loved one and you want to say something, you're just like, let me take a breath. It's up to you. Whoever you trust is whatever you're going to do.
But take that calming, centering breath.
Yep.
And then that allows you to be that more neutral observer.
Yep.
You want to think both in your shoes as well as your counterpart's shoes. And then that gives you a lot more perspective and some time to think about how to most beneficially proceed for the scenario.
Exactly.
Great. I love it.
This is the other thing I want to say. It sounds really great when we talk about it. When you put this in action, it's going to take a lot more time to do this naturally. And so for those of you who are listening and going like, this is never going to work in live, that's because you haven't done it. That's because you haven't repeated it. It's kind of like me saying, I'm going to go to the gym and I will get the best abs ever. And I do 5 push-ups and I go, this is never going to work. Emotional intelligence, the reason why it's so much more predictive of people getting promoted, it's correlated to emotional intelligence and higher emotional intelligence, is because you can up your score. So unlike IQ, your emotional intelligence, you have the control to develop it. That takes consistency. That takes practice. That takes all of your being to do it so that you can develop those muscles in order to have high emotional intelligence.
And it sounds like emotional intelligence is really that slow thinking process, that type 1, very quick amygdala response doesn't have nearly as much context as when you engage your entire brain.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And for us, if we are overly confident, where it bleeds into the arrogance piece, this is going to be so much harder to do it when it's happening, because your thought process is probably, I would imagine, something like, I can't believe this person said this. I am better than all of these people in the room, right? Our unconscious doesn't say things like that directly, like I'm the best one, but you feel a little, what is the word? Pompous?
Pompous.
Yeah, in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Self-inflated.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you're just like, I'm not going to take this crap in your mind. And this, I just want people to understand that this isn't something that's easy. If emotional intelligence was easy, then we will all be developing it day in, day and night, and we'll have like amazing people just walking around. But we are also humans, and we come with history, with background of hurts, of rejection, of past failures, and that shapes us, whether we are fully aware or not. That shapes who we are. And the triggered moments are the ones that tell us where we get amplified and where that amplification we can come in and tone it down and balance it more.
It almost sounds too easy. So I'm really excited to put this into practice throughout the week. Remembering stop, it's something I can spell, thankfully, but to just think through suppressing that initial knee-jerk reaction, taking that centering breath, thinking about things a little bit longer, sounds like a really powerful tool. And I know in certain situations I've done things like that before. I think the piece that's maybe a little bit new to me is the take it the breath, and the way that you connected that to the body is fascinating to me. So I guess for all the listeners, maybe we can give them a challenge that over the next week or so, observe yourself and look for what your trigger signals are and try that breath. I think that's one that we all think about. We breathe constantly, so it's second nature to us, but often gets overlooked in a high stress scenario.
Absolutely. And we also have the tendency to think that we're very self-aware. I think the number is actually, I know the number, it's 90% of us think that we practice self-awareness very well. I think this is actually a number Daniel Goleman came up with, where in fact, do you want to guess how many of us really show behaviorally self-awareness?
I almost want to guess the opposite, but that seems too obvious. So
What would be your guess?
30%.
That's so wonderful, and it's wrong.
No.
So 10 to 15%
Wow.
behaviorally show self-awareness.
This reminds me, I think, speaking of self-awareness, kind of a sidestep, but I think it was something like 80% of the 80% of Americans think they're better than the average driver. It's the same exact concept where we trust ourselves. It's the same reason why people vote for speed limits to remain the same, but they don't follow them. So all of us have a tendency to go beyond the speed limit because we trust ourselves, but we don't trust everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that self-awareness is just so low across the board. So you say 10 to 15% of us actually are self-aware, but 90% of us think that we are.
Absolutely.
Maybe know that we are.
Absolutely. We always think and even those who have anxiety, because now we're on the other side of the spectrum. We're talking about arrogance. We're talking about that, right? The other side, which is actually one of the reasons why I love that you are a part of this podcast, because if we were to put you and me on the spectrum of like balance, I am in the anxious, and then you are more in the confident. Like it could almost, not that you're an arrogant person at all, but it could, it could go to that level where when something triggers us, maybe yours would be more arrogant and mine would be like, I'm going to fall apart now. I'm an anxious person.
And neither of us are in health, so to speak.
Right.
So, Laylee, how are some ways that listeners can determine, are we in the 90% or are we the magical 10 or 15% that are self-aware?
The magical unicorn.
Yeah, it sounds like a very select group. So how can we get some clues or maybe insight on our own level of self-awareness?
I think stop guessing your level of self-awareness and whether or not you're the magical unicorn, and just assume that you have room for growth. Because if you think I am the 10 to 15%, then you have just put yourself in a situation or two where that will show the amplification very well that you're not. So for your sake, I would say just assume that you are not part of that 10 to 15% so that you have a better understanding of the fact that you have to develop, even if you were in the 10 to 15%. Like when I'm doing coaching and I see this, and I work with amazing leaders, they have high emotional intelligence. To me, that doesn't matter because you can continuously develop your EQ. And EQ, by the way, is emotional intelligence. So if you hear me say that, it's the abbreviation of it.
So I also think there's probably a scenario where maybe 10% or 15% of people at any given time are self-aware, but there's times where I've caught myself being much less self-aware, and then times maybe where I am a little bit more tuned in. So I would also think, I'm just hypothesizing here, that even if you are self-aware, there are times where you're not. So it's probably a skill that everyone needs to work on regardless.
I love that. This situation, the context, all of that matters so much. That I am super self-aware when it comes to work because I've just been trained in it for so long. So from a leadership perspective, I know how to stay calm. But what happens to me specifically is once I am out of the office, that's when I start to feel all the feelings. That's when the aftermath comes through. And so for me, that's when that level of self-awareness is very important, where I say, well, you know what? I don't need to go to the gym, which was actually today. I felt like I wasn't my ultimate self. I need to probably rest and have a seat somewhere and just relax. So you need to know your context.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great. So what are some ways that we can work on our emotional intelligence, our self-awareness?
So the self-awareness piece, and I'm really glad you asked that question. It's the foundation for the other three domains of emotional intelligence. It's a foundation to regulate myself. It's a foundation for relationship management, for social awareness. So those three. Just pay attention throughout the day. And maybe that would be another action that I would give to the listeners. When you are going about your day, I just want you to start thinking about how your body is responding. Let's start from there. So in the mornings, do you wake up and you immediately go, oh, crap, today's one of those days? And you're immediately thinking today's going to be a terrible day, right? Where does that come from? Right? So for instance, maybe that comes from, I know I was sick for 30 days when I was 23. And
30 days.
For 30 days, I would just have panic attacks. I told you I'm an anxious person.
Wow.
And that had to do with, that pattern. So when that was over, like months later, when I would wake up, I immediately would be like, oh my God, what's going to happen today? Oh my God, what's going to happen today? But that's the pattern match to my amygdala is, I'm safe. I'm going to be okay. So being aware.
Can you implement that same stop advice? I love that. So, for example, you wake up and so many of us immediately start checking work email victim to that.
There.
And I know so many people have talked way longer and way more intelligently about that. So maybe we don't go into that today, but maybe the first thing listeners can do when they wake up and they start to have, oh my gosh, today's Monday, I have to go back to work. It's going to be horrible. I have to confront this coworker I really don't like. I don't know. Whatever dragon you need to slay that day, maybe you can practice that stop methodology on your own. Just wake up, that trigger sort of happens, recognize that trigger, take that breath, and then again, try and observe.
Use an observation. There's something else that I know you do that I would love the listeners to talk about. I try to meditate during, like in the middle of my day. My meditation's a little different because I like audio. And so that's been my thing. I know you do a different type of meditation, so I also want you to talk about that too.
Yeah, happy to. So it's called nature-based mindfulness. So really the intent is kind of twofold. So you get a bit of a break from work, which generally makes you significantly more productive. There's a lot of studies about taking a 5-minute break, even just to reset your brain every 2 to 3 hours, really has a significant improvement on your overall output. So it forces that. And then it also connects you to nature, which is such a calming, healing place for the majority of individuals. It might not work for everyone, but I've really found I work in the office all day. We have fluorescent lighting around. It's not a very calming environment. And I'm on the go, go, go. My calendar is usually meeting upon meeting upon meeting. And taking 5 minutes twice a day to just walk outside, kind of reconnect with nature, really puts me in a different frame of mind. It's been uh, transformational, almost, I would say. As a leader, I feel so much more centered and able to engage that slower process and do things like stop in the middle of a difficult situation.
And what you just expressed to Jakson has to do with your self-regulation. So you're able to use that as a tool to keep yourself calm during the day. So
Yeah.
more of the self-regulation and the self-awareness.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing for our first one. Anything else you want to share with the listeners today?
No, really appreciate the opportunity. Again, really excited. I think great conversation. Really impressed. I learned some new things about you today. And yeah, I'm excited to implement stop. Again, stop, take a breath, observe, and then proceed. I think, again, that take a breath is really the critical one for me that I haven't been doing, and I think really could help recenter me in those difficult scenarios.
That's awesome. And I really enjoyed having you too. So I'm looking forward to doing more of these with you too.
Thank you, Laylee.
Of course. Thank you so much. If you haven't, please subscribe or follow whatever platform you're using. And if you have any questions, go to invivoleadershipstrategies.com. I also do workshops and coaching. Till the next episode, I will see you soon. Live your life in vivo. Bye.